And to the point where I was like to my husband, you deserve better. You should leave me and take our daughter. And I felt so much mum guilt around, or parent guilt. Some parts were so bad, my husband had to take, a day of leave to help me. And it wasn't actually that I wasn't able to do it, but I'd got myself into such a state of thinking I couldn't do it that made me not be able to get through the day. But absolutely, I hated that the sleep cycles and that vicious cyclical thinking consumed me 24 hours a day. How am I going to get through it? How am I going to drive my daughter somewhere? How am I going to go to the park and enjoy this period with her? How am I going to take her to a play date? How do I cook for her? Accepting that was what today looked like, and that was okay, and just not beating myself up about that. It's just so much kindness, right? You have to just find that self-compassion and that empathy for yourself and that kindness and grace. Just give yourself grace all the time.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to yet another really special Talking Some episode. We have Shelby with us. Welcome.
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. So glad and looking forward to sharing your story with our community. But just as a quick backstory, I sent an email actually to the community and asked people if they were ready to be guests, and you said yes, and I'm so glad that you did. So with that said, tell us in your words, how did you start having trouble sleeping?
Yeah, so I have always been a pretty good sleeper. I mean, I definitely, like every human, when there was a stressful event or deadline or something exciting coming up, I would have times where I didn't sleep well, but I didn't think of anything of it. I just carried on with life. And yeah, my sleep struggles started actually once I had my baby. So I am 10 months postpartum now, and this is my first child. And I think looking back now, it started with the hypnic jerks for me, but I didn't really recognize them as too much, so they didn't get worse. And I didn't really take too much notice of them, just like, oh, wow, I'm just super aware all the time, and then carried on. And once my daughter kind of got through the 4-month sleep regression that everyone talks about, she started sleeping great. She slept through the night from 4 months, and I stopped sleeping, which was soul destroying because I was so tired from the newborn phase, obviously. So she slept well, and I kind of had a couple of nights where I didn't sleep super great. I struggled to fall asleep. That was probably my biggest thing. And it was only a couple of days, and then it kind of went away. And then it came up again. And then I started noticing these jerks, and I was like, what is going on? I must have a mineral depletion. It must be postpartum. I must be low in magnesium. And I'm working with a health coach. I am also studying to be a health coach, but coaches need coaches. And she was like, oh, it must be a magnesium thing or some kind of vitamin or mineral depletion. So I started taking all these things, as does everybody. And it got worse and worse and worse, to the point that I had gone a few days with no sleep here and there, then would get a little bit, but I was just becoming more and more conscious of my lack of sleep. So
sorry to jump in here, but it was the jerks were starting to happen, and you thought maybe there's some mineral deficiency or something like that. And was it now the jerks really that did you have this experience that you were about to fall asleep, a jerk woke you up, and it happened over and over and over again, or was it more like you didn't sleep at all?
Yeah, so I think it was a bit of combination of both. So I think the jerks happened more and more, and I became more and more aware of them. And what was one or two became like hundreds a night. Like I just never stopped jerking. I was like on some kind of roller coaster ride or something, and every time I'd start to drift off, I'd jerk awake. And then from there, I would have so many, and I'd get so worked up that I was like, well, I can't sleep. And then other periods weren't as bad with the jerks, or my brain was already just too hyper aroused before I wanted to go to sleep that I got myself so wound up that I couldn't go to sleep. So it was kind of a combo of both. Yeah, I think it started with the jerks, and then I wouldn't let myself go to sleep. And at the peak of my journey, or lack of sleep, I was doing periods of 5 days without any sleep at all, and looking after a baby all day. And I think I was in this vicious cycle of, how am I going to look after her when I'm not sleeping at all? How am I going to be a good parent? How am I going to survive? My biggest fear was actually around driving, just because I was like, I am so tired. What if I have a car crash and hurt someone else or my daughter, which was my biggest fear of all. So the 5-day blocks, it happened like a one-off, and I was pretty upset and pretty stressed, and listening to my husband sleep beautifully all night, that made me feel more frustrated, obviously. And then I had a couple of days, and then I had another block of it. This was maybe in about 5 months. So I'd had 5 months postpartum, sorry. So I'd had about a month of the insomnia being pretty prevalent, and it just kept getting worse and worse. So at that point, it was actually right on Christmas. Merry Christmas to me. And I don't even really remember Christmas Day and the kind of few days around that, because I was just so exhausted and so stressed about not sleeping. It consumed every part of me. So I saw a doctor who obviously put me straight on to Temazepam for a couple of days. So I did that. I took the Temazepam for one night, and I actually got some sleep. So the doctor said to me, just take it once, try not to take it again. She prescribed me like a couple of days worth. And then she said, book in to see your regular GP. So I got some sleep the second night. The first night on the Temazepam. The second night obviously didn't help. I didn't take any Temazepam. And then I kind of went through that cycle again of like a few days of zero sleep, a night or two of a couple of hours here and there. And then I started having multiple back-to-back blocks of like 4 to 5 days of no sleep at all. And just getting like, I honestly was becoming psychotic. Like I was losing my mind. I don't really remember how bad it got, obviously kind of being through it now, but my husband was pretty concerned for my welfare. I was like tearing my hair out because I was just so tired, and just, yeah, I was so stressed obviously about it. And every night obviously like feared getting into bed. Even my bedroom became a really like scary place for me. I didn't want nighttime to happen. So the doctors then put me on a week of Zopiclone. They said that I needed to reset my sleep cycle. So I was really hopeful that this would be the thing. I must say, prior to starting the sleeping medications, my sleep hygiene was obviously something that I addressed. I did everything, took everything, tried everything. I practiced meditation and yoga for my well-being, but I started using them as sleep efforts, and stopped practicing them for my general welfare. I took magnesium. I took activated charcoal. People on Reddit were recommending different things to help with the jerks, and teas, and honestly, you name it, you've heard it all before. I tried it. And when I started the sleep reset with the Zopiclone for a week, I actually found your channel, and started watching a little bit of some of the stories, and I was like, okay, I can get through this. At that point, I signed up to the bedtime app, but I also used that as like a sleep effort instead of just taking it for what it was and learning. And yeah, I did the week of Zopiclone. I got some sleep here and there, obviously not good quality. And then as soon as the Zopiclone stopped, I went downhill again. I tried to then just have a break from sleeping medications. Oh, actually, I did try using melatonin in between. That made it worse for me, actually. Like, I just, my jerks were more prevalent. I was more aware of them. And then I decided to try and commit to your sleep program properly, and actually just like learn from it and remove any expectations. So not before having another period of doing a Temazepam round for a week. Then it kind of lost its effect. So they actually put me on a double dose for a week. And I was kind of in the middle of this double dose, learning lots on your program and bedtime, and working with Chris, who was incredible. And in the middle of like the double dose, I was like, I'm done. I'm not taking any more drugs. This is a load of rubbish. And it's not helping me. So I just decided to cold turkey stop taking the sleep medications, which I think my doctor would prefer me to have like tapered down. But I was like, well, what's the point? It's not like it's helping and I'm then going to taper down, and it's not having any effect on my body other than making me feel more drowsy and not helping me sleep. So that's kind of my story.
No,
Yeah.
thanks so much for sharing this. And there's, I have some more questions, but you told like we get the gist of it in a very, very nice and helpful way. And one thing I wanted to ask you was, when you first came across our channel during that time of like the Zopicon reset, did you immediately find that it kind of resonated and you said like, this makes sense to me, or were you kind of a little bit skeptical and sounded a little bit out there for you?
I was like searching for answers anywhere. And I actually came across Brittany, one of your other coaches, her Instagram page, because I was like, mum insomnia, parent insomnia, my health coach, and actually my doctors think that this may have started from like the newborn phase and being awake all the time and just needing to be ready for whatever my daughter needed. Which it very well may have been. I can't really pinpoint something, but yeah, I found your channel through Brittany, and then through Reddit, other Reddit users who had, other than recommending all of these different natural supplements, said, check out the sleep coach school. And so I was like, sleep school coach. And so I was like, I'm definitely going to have a look, but I was pretty skeptical, I won't lie.
Yeah. And that's, yeah, I appreciate it. And a lot of people initially say like, can it really be like that? It sounds kind of too simple
Yeah.
or a little bit too, fuzzy. But all right, thanks for sharing that. And so initially you started with bedtime and the general education, but it became sort of a sleep effort. But at some
Yeah.
point you said like, no, I'm kind of committing in a different way now. And what were maybe some initial insights or experiences that started to shift how you think, thought, or made a positive impact on you?
Yeah, I really loved how the app first, the bedtime app, was just really bite-sized chunks. That was really great for me because I am a classic type A personality, and I was reading through it and I was like, wow, it's like Daniel's written this app for me. So that was quite nice. It felt like someone actually understood what I was going through, as opposed to just like trying to treat the symptoms, but actually acknowledge like that it is really normal, and people who are like high performers and things like that tend to experience insomnia more, or like we're aware of it and then need to fix it because we're fixers. So that's definitely me. But I also really liked how that ties in as I'm the type of person who would then be like, well, I'm going to read 700 pages if Daniel will allow me, to learn as much as I could. But the bite-sized chunks were actually really good because they slowed me down, and they made me stop and actually kind of digest and absorb the information and just like think about it a little bit differently. I guess for me, I tried to, when you said that removing it for a sleep effort and actually just learning, I tried to put more of a curious lens on it, because I was obviously desperate to have something change, and nothing was working so far. So I was like, well, it's time to you're not sleeping, so just don't worry about that. What can you learn from this? And obviously that was not easy. I think, watching some of your videos with other people who have had success, I was like, wow, it must just be so easy. And I think people don't really acknowledge, for other people who might watch these videos, how hard it is to actually just let go of that, and how hard it is to accept being awake when you're awake. It's not just as simple as, well, I'm awake. It is really, really hard. And obviously, when I was still getting up to then feed my daughter in the middle of the night, and then would continue to be awake for 5 or 6 hours after that, that was really challenging for me. But it does take time, but it does get easier to accept it. And then, as you say in all of your teachings, sleep will come more naturally, and it definitely does. I wouldn't say that I'm fully recovered. I'm on a journey, and it is not linear at all. But I'm I'm in a very different place with how I look at it now. So if I have nights where I'm not sleeping as well, like, I know exactly what it is. And I'm okay with it now. I kind of just let it be instead of just fighting it, which does get easier once you do start to get little bits of sleep. When you have these hiccups or speed bumps in the journey to recovery, it is easier to accept that being awake is okay, and it's a little more comfortable. Yeah.
No, that's you made so many great points, and one of them is like I've said this before, but I think it's well worth repeating, which is that when I'm talking to you here, Shelby, it's like we're compressing many months of like learning and kind of this inner journey into like a 30-minute, 45-minute, whatever this becomes, like episode.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that a lot of people who watch you will see you kind of smiling and you're talking about this sort of casually, and they'll think like, oh no, she can't have had this struggle that I have, but you did. It's just that,
Yeah.
it's
I mean, I definitely, watching some of your other, clients and things that you've worked with, like, I have been grateful that it's not been 15 years or something like that for me, because I cannot even imagine what that would have been like for some of those people that you've helped. But it's still the same. And I would say to anyone that's in their struggles is it's not important how much time you've been struggling for. It's the story behind it and how you got to where you are, and knowing that there is a way forward. That's probably the biggest thing I've learned. And like, one thing I must say is Chris was so vulnerable and empathetic in his support through the bedtime app. I knew that I needed to have that kind of one-on-one tailored support. I needed a human behind the app as well. So that was my choice to go for that route. And he was incredible. And I think that obviously, as a health coach, being able to share your challenges makes you more empathetic. And having that empathy from Chris just made me feel like, wow, this is really normal and it is okay. And I'm not alone. And other parents go through this, because currently in my circle here, I am the only one experiencing this. So I'm like, why me? What have I done wrong? What have I done in my postpartum journey that has been different to others? And obviously it's nothing really. It's just the way my brain is attached onto being awake, and then that fear of being able to just like let go. And my journey, as I said, wasn't 15 years or anything, but it was 6 months so far. It's been 6 months, and I'd say 5 months of very, very intense and intense struggling for me. I think the point that I was ripping out my hair and things like that was pretty scary, especially for my husband to see. And that's not who I am as a person. So the sleep deprivation or the anxiety around it really started to turn me into somebody that I had never seen before, which was not nice. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing this. I think it's so helpful for our community to you know to hear this from you, how difficult it was at about that point, and that things can change once you
Yeah.
start learning and taking this in your journey. And there was one other thing I wanted to ask you about, which was you decided, and of course for anyone tuning in here, this is just a discussion between two people, no medical device or anything like that, but you actually cold turkeyed on the temazepam, I guess, which is like, a lot of people who hear that will say like, so did you have any kind of withdrawal or anything of that nature? What was your experience?
I mean, I can't say if I had really withdrawal because I was struggling as it was. So I don't know if it was just getting more intense in terms of my anxiety around sleep, or if I did start to have withdrawals. But I mean, I knew things were getting pretty bad. My jerks were definitely at their like peak. I couldn't even tell you how many 100 a night I was having. It just felt like I couldn't relax. So I remember those first few nights after deciding to stop the temazepam, that my brain was extremely loud, and it wasn't noisy with anything valuable, or I couldn't pinpoint like it was this particular thing that was triggering me. It was just noisy, and it honestly almost sounded like, sometimes it was nursery rhymes. You listen to them with your kids going around in my head for hours and hours a night. Other times it was just noise, like almost like a white noise machine, which is actually what is in my daughter's room. But in my mind, it just kind of sounded like a vacuumy cleaner whirring away. And that definitely was heightened for those first few nights after. But I'm not sure if it was, I obviously I can't tell you because I'm not a medical professional. If it was a withdrawal, I didn't look at the side effects, because I am very health conscious and I don't really like going on medications unless I absolutely need to, which at that point I did. And I totally support everybody's doing whatever they need to do. But I didn't want to look at anything of effects wise, because I didn't want to make myself more anxious or more stressed around what would it be if I came off it. And in some cases, I have found Reddit really helpful for people sharing their experiences. But in other cases, I've found that I get so caught up in the side effects or the challenges that people have had, and that has impacted me in the past. So I decided to just not look at anything, which is not easy, not Googling, because I am Dr. Google all the time, and that's something I'm trying to work on as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Um,
Totally get it. And now, going back to the time where you had found the app, you're working through it, you're working with Chris, found it really helpful. Uh, what was how did things change on, like, sleep wise? A lot of the people who tune in here will be curious about that. Did you start having one of those kind of magical moments where you're like, oh, I actually fell asleep without struggle, or was it something like a gradual changes, or how did that look like?
Yeah, I must say my journey was actually very linear to start with. And maybe that's because I was in such a bad way that I wasn't getting any sleep. So some sleep was an improvement for me. And it's funny because it's probably been about 2 months now that things have been improving. But I haven't really had any hiccups or speed bumps so far, until, funnily enough, this week, when I was coming to talk to you. And it's like, it's similar symptoms, similar experiences, but I think at the moment it's now a different reason. I'm nearing going back to work, and I'm actually starting my own business as a health coach. So that has been really exciting. And I think my brain is now hyper aroused from that, because I'm just like, oh, what can I work on? But yeah, I was really lucky that my journey was pretty linear to start. And I'm not saying like I slept 10 hours the first night. One thing in the app that I really liked that you spoke about is when you do start to get sleep, don't think of it as, oh, I slept and I'm going to sleep every night and this was amazing. It's just kind of waking up and acknowledging, it was nice that I got some rest and some sleep last night, and then try not to think about it again. And obviously that is not as easy at the start. So getting those little bits, I was like, oh my gosh, don't think about it 24 hours a day, because then you're just going to get yourself back into that vicious cycle, which in itself, trying not to think about it for 24 hours a day gets you into the vicious cycle a little bit. So yeah, I really tried to apply those learnings from bedtime of just kind of acknowledging what happened throughout the night in a really generic way, and trying not to put any emotion towards it, as if I was removing myself into like a third party observer, having watched myself wake up and go, she got some sleep, great. But one thing I did notice is as time went on, I stopped thinking about my jerks as much, because I stopped noticing them. They reduced, and I really tried to just embrace them when it got really bad and I decided to come off the Temazepam at that peak of my journey. I really just surrendered and said, like, let them come. And they came all night. And at first that was really hard to just kind of keep letting them be there and not trying to push them away or resolve them. And honestly, not even trying to acknowledge them, just let it happen. Try not to think about it, which is harder to do than said. And eventually, over weeks, I notice them less, then they happen less. They definitely still happen now, and I just kind of don't really give them any kind of effort or energy. Just, they're there, that's fine. Sometimes it feels like I'm going to have a hypnic jerk while I'm awake. And I don't know if that's because my body and my muscles are just like, when I have that moment of respite to sit down, which is not often, as anybody who's a parent will know, my body gets into that relaxing phase so quickly. And then it feels like I'm going to have a hypnic jerk while I'm, conscious. But I don't know if that's just part of my healing journey to letting my body relax again more. Yeah.
I mean, I just spinning off of that, I think when we had the experience of like we're relaxed and we're about to fall asleep, and then we have a jerk, then we can have like sort of a memory of that, right? And when we're once in a while sitting down and relaxing during the day, like that memory can come back because there's kind of an association with like relaxing and a jerk, right? So I can see that happening. And the other thing I want to just emphasize very briefly was that it's so helpful to when you start having like nights that are easier, where you sleep more, it's helpful to kind of acknowledge that, oh, that was nice, but not to like think of it as a win or celebrate, because that then leads our brain to think like, oh, I have to do it again. How did I do it again? It leads us to performance anxiety. So when you're just like, yeah, it was nice, it happened because I wasn't really trying anything, it just happened. That's very, very helpful. Now,
I got bad to the point, like I obviously wasn't sleeping in my room with my husband, which I wasn't doing in the first few months of having our baby, because you're kind of two ships passing in the night anyway. So I ended up spending a lot of time in the lounge, in the spare bedroom, just couldn't be in my bedroom. And that was a really scary time for me, because that was my happy place and, my place of rest and respite, even if it wasn't related to sleep. And when I was doing all the sleep efforts, like the meditation and the yoga and the sleepy teas, and I mean, I'm sitting here, obviously it's 8:30 in the morning, so I'm drinking a cup of coffee, but I stopped drinking coffee, tea, any caffeine. I didn't eat sugar. I like almost took it to a whole nother level of trying to remove anything that could potentially impact my sleep. Obviously, I was doing no screens before bed for hours, taking a warm bath. I mean, you name it. I tried it. But returning to my bedroom was one thing that I really wanted to work on. And I'm there like 98% of the time now. Definitely I have periods where if I'm awake and embracing that wakefulness, I do leave the room, to not wake my husband as well. But yeah, you know, doctors say to you, if you're awake, don't get up and watch Netflix, or don't read a book and turn on a light and things like that. But obviously what I've learned with you is that that's actually fine. If it helps your brain to feel safe and happy while you're awake, then do whatever you need to do. And I really loved when, you know, in the app it said, if you need to have a snack and have something you enjoy. And I was like, thanks, Daniel. I'm going to have a snack. It's 2:30 in the morning. Everyone else is asleep, but I'm going to have a snack. So I did. And obviously as a breastfeeding mother, that was a really rewarding experience at 2:30 in the morning. So yeah, I think it's kind of scary how you go to see someone like a doctor, and their first questions are around sleep hygiene, and you're doing everything perfectly, and it's not working. And I think I got more into the anxiety state and stress about that because I was doing everything perfectly, type A personality, and still not having results or performance, like you said. So, oh yeah, the performance anxiety was high. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you as you're sharing this, I wanted to ask you about something that you sort of talked about, but very often, naturally it happens that when we have, trouble sleeping, we go to maybe another room, a spare bedroom or something like that, and then going back to our own bed can become like its own source of like worry,
Yeah.
right? Am I going to sleep in my own bed? But we kind of feel conflicted because that's where we want to sleep, et cetera, et cetera. But how did that? I imagine there was a time where you kind of decided you were going to go back to your own bed, or how did that happen, and what was that like?
Yeah, I tried little periods of it and just kind of tested the waters. And the way I looked at it was, even if I'm not sleeping, just to spend a bit of time in my bed, next to my husband. Um, I had to really accept, like, he's asleep. You know, there's no point in continuing to be miserable about him being asleep and you not, because that's not going to change right now, whether you're awake or not. So, um, yeah, I would go into the spare bedroom, read a book with the light on, watch some Netflix if I wanted. Um, it was around doing that something that you enjoy. And honestly, sometimes I found watching some of these videos enjoyable because it brought that sense of relief around, this is normal, this is okay. So it wasn't hard work for me to sit there and watch other people's success stories. But I did kind of just test the waters of returning back to my bedroom, even if it was for like 10 minutes or half an hour. I would just lie there, relax, enjoy lying there. And sometimes I woke up there in the morning, and other times I didn't have any luck falling asleep. So I would go back to wherever I was, whichever room in the house that was. And I think it's just taken a bit of time to kind of go to my bedroom. And to the point now, I am trying to actually do my wind down, whatever that looks like for everybody, in bed in my room. Whereas I used to, obviously, with the sleep hygiene, don't go to your bed until you're going to sleep, because otherwise you're making your sleep space part of your awake space and removing that haven, which is a load of rubbish. So I lie in bed now before going to sleep, and I read a book. Or if my husband and I want to watch, like half an hour of Netflix, we may do that on the couch in the living room, or we may lie in bed depending on what time of night it is. So I think just trying to break down some of the stigma around that in my own brain, that you can't do this here because people say you can't. And that's allowed my mindset around my bedroom to shift back to, this is my safe space, my haven. I feel comfortable here. I'm relaxed here. And my biggest part of my journey now is still that initial falling asleep. Once I'm able to get to sleep, I'm pretty good, but it's just my brain is still learning around the hyperarousal, and coming down from that, and just, being awake. But it is a lot more comfortable now
Yeah,
to
yeah.
do so.
So nice
Yeah.
to hear.
Yeah.
And I also ask you about, another big shift or changes when we start feeling like ourselves again. A lot of people feel like I
Mhm.
wasn't at all myself. Like, have you started feeling more like yourself? And if so, when did it happen?
Yeah, I think that's been a bit of a journey as well. Your your netto approach is something that I love, and I just think that's so awesome. Obviously, applying that to sleep was not easy to start with, and it has become a lot easier. And now I'm trying to apply it to other areas of my life as well, where the energy is not serving me, or the friendship may not be serving me, or whatever it might be. Um, and yeah, I think I am definitely feeling more like myself. I think that's a little hard to know postpartum as well, because it's a bit of a blurry who am I sometimes. And it's been a bit of a journey, but I'm definitely feeling like I have more energy to do stuff now. And when I do have, less sleep, nights of less sleep, and where I'm more like restless and I'm awake, the ability to actually be awake is so much easier. And the next day, even though I may have had the same amount of sleep as when I was in the really tough period, or less, I don't feel anywhere near as bad, because my anxiety and my mindset around being awake has shifted, and I don't have that constant burden of what am I going to be like the next day? How am I going to parent? How am I going to exist? Because you just get up and you do it. Um, so even though the sleep hours, I mean, they've definitely improved, but when I have relapse periods, or, speed bumps, I like to call them, um, the energy is nowhere near as depleted, because I'm just not feeling stressed about it all the time. And it really does consume your thoughts 24 hours a day when you're not sleeping, which is really awful, because it takes away from your ability to live and enjoy all the other moments in your life that are positive. So,
Yeah.
yeah, natto is something that I love, and I talk about it all the time, and share it with some of my health coaching clients, not relating to sleep, but other parts of their lives as well, and just offer it as something they might want to explore. So it's really become a mantra in my life. So thank you to your wife, because I believe she was the one who came up with it.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, you read that. That's exactly
yeah,
right. You coined it really. And yeah, it's wonderful to hear how you're applying it to other areas of your life and even with your clients. And long term, I want to do more of that actually myself. Like I'm writing a book about sort of applying it beyond insomnia, and maybe at some point it will even be sort of like for life, like
yeah,
general life and whatnot. But what was I going to ask you? Oh yeah, yeah. One thing that I think a lot of especially moms who watch this episode will be thinking about is the question of like there's often the kind of guilt element of like, if I'm not sleeping, I can't take care of myself, but also I can't be a good partner, I can't be a good parent. Did you have these thoughts, and how did you meet that?
oh, all the time. And to the point where I was like to my husband, you deserve better. You should leave me and take our daughter. And I felt so much mum guilt around, or parent guilt, to the point some parts were so bad my husband had to take, a day of leave to help me. And it wasn't actually that I wasn't able to do it, but I'd got myself into such a state of thinking I couldn't do it, that made me not be able to get through the day. But absolutely, I hated that the sleep cycles and that vicious cyclical thinking consumed me 24 hours a day. Um, and I felt like I had word vomit about it. Like, I wanted to talk about sleep 24 hours a day. I wanted anybody that would listen to the challenges I was having, I wanted to share or ask if anyone else was experiencing it, because I felt so alone. And yeah, there were definitely periods of how am I going to, I mean, every day, how am I going to get through it? How am I going to drive my daughter somewhere? How am I going to go to the park and enjoy this period with her? How am I going to take her to a play date? How do I cook for her? And I think a lot of the irrational fears started to come around like bath time, obviously, because you're required to watch them all the time. What if I fall asleep while she's in the bath? Or, while I was driving was another one. Or when my husband had to go away, he works from home, so I'm quite like fortunate that he is here. But I really tried to emulate that he did leave the house because it was important for me to know I could parent on my own and I was able to do it. And I think in any situation, whether someone's a parent or not, you just keep going because someone else is dependent on you, and that's your role, right? And no matter how hard it is, you kind of just somewhere find your way to pull it together and keep going. When things were really bad, there were definitely days where I was like, I'm not going to drive today because I'm a hazard to other people. So I would take her in the pram and we would walk instead. It meant some of our excursions and our activities weren't as normal as they are now. But it was only in those really acute times where I decided that that was best, obviously for our safety, but also for other people. And I never want to be a hazard to anyone else on the road. And then I felt guilty about that because I was like, I'm limiting her from going to play and, I'm hindering her life, which is not true. And I think that it was actually the right decision. It was okay for me to not drive and, have a day off to going anywhere. And that was also nice to put my energy back into just being present with her. And that was a little bit of a shifting moment for me, was just accepting that that was what today looked like and that was okay, and just not beating myself up about that. It's just so much kindness, right? You have to just find that self-compassion and that empathy for yourself and that kindness and grace. Just give yourself grace all the time, which is not easy to do. And I know that everyone's their biggest critic, but I think that was probably a really shifting moment for me, was removing those pressures and expectations that I was intrinsically placing on myself. And that allowed a lot of that anxiety to just kind of melt away over time. It wasn't overnight. I don't think any of the insomnia recovery journey is an overnight process.
No.
And anybody who does have, improvements that quickly, that's fantastic. But yeah, it's definitely a journey and not a linear journey.
Yeah. In some way, it's kind of like it never ends in a way, because once you're, you've seen kind of these principles and these universal truths and how they help with sleep, then you may actually have no struggles whatsoever with sleep, but you're kind of not curious about like your own thoughts and your own reactions to things and etc. So like the journey of like self-exploration and curiosity about how the human mind, etc., it becomes like a lifelong journey, I think.
Yeah, when I had this like regression, you could say, this past week, I was like, oh, it's so funny that it's coming up right before I'm about to talk to Daniel. And the self-doubt crept in again, like maybe I shouldn't be sharing my journey because I'm not through it. But then I was like, well, it's a forever journey and something that I'm going to be curious about, as you said, forever. And that constant learning is actually really important. And yeah, I think it is. There's no such thing as everybody sleeping perfectly every night for their whole lives. I think there is, returning to great sleep, a very high percentage of the time, but everybody has nights or periods of the night where they don't sleep well. And I think as well, I learned a lot of that through my daughter and watching her, and learning from baby sleep consultants around them trying to connect their sleep cycles, and they have day and night confusion. They don't understand the difference. And I'm like, well, that's really interesting, because even as adults, people say they sleep 12 hours without moving. Well, that's a load of rubbish as well, because everybody has a sleep cycle. They end. Some people just carry on straight into that next sleep cycle. Some, wake up, roll over. People notice, people don't. People get up and go to the bathroom, and it's all normal. And I think it's just removing some of the stigma around that A, the journey is linear, and B, that recovery is, once you're better, you're better forever. But it's not true. We're humans, and the insomnia journey applies like every other journey in life. It's just a constant journey. And yeah, now I just look at it in a much more light way, and it's a lot lighter for me. It's a lot easier to just talk about or not talk about. I'm not desperate to talk about it 24 hours a day, trying to find answers. And that has come with time. And it is easier. And so, yeah, this week, while I've been having this, this period of I haven't been sleeping well, I'm just not worrying about it, because I know that the sleep will come when my brain is ready to let it come. And I know I can find the pinpoint reason for it now. And right now it's around the excitement of using my brain again in the way that I did before becoming a parent. Whereas during the really acute phase for me over these last few months, I think I struggled to find a pinpoint, which as a, type A personality, that annoyed me. Why can't I find the answer, the reason? What's the reason? And now I'm like, well, I can't find the reason, and that's okay. It could have been pregnancy. It could have been newborn phase. It could have been anything, and that's actually okay. You don't have to have a reason and an answer to have a journey of healing and recovery.
Yeah, that's that's so nicely said. And what was I gonna say? Yeah, actually, I just have my two answers that I tend to ask everyone at the end of this interview, and one of them is the question of if you could travel back in time to when this started, and you could tell yourself something. What would you tell yourself?
That this is just another part of being a human being, and to give yourself so much love and kindness and grace, because you are doing everything you can, and your insomnia doesn't define you.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, that's probably the thing for me. Just like anything else, you're not defined by it. It's part of who you are.
Well said. And finally, we already touched upon this one, but have you learned some things from this journey that you can see has helped you or will help you in other aspects of life?
Oh, totally. I think it's taught me to slow down a little bit. It forced me to slow down a little bit, and that's been really helpful. I followed on kind of my improvement, well, my sleep journey started to improve, and then I got COVID, like kind of 3 days into starting to see some change, and so that felt like another setback, but that's part of living. So I think just learning to slow down and accept that that's actually okay sometimes is something. It has really just brought more empathy into my life for other people. I mean, parents, especially, because this is my first time doing this. You learn a lot while you're preparing to be a parent or growing up and seeing your parents do things, but until you're actually doing it, there's no hood like parenthood, right? And I think I just have a lot of empathy for people who are, new parents or second, third, fourth, however many times, single parents. I just have so much respect and admiration for them. And then people who aren't parents as well, because just having that compassion for other people. And it's actually helped me to become, I thought I was a fairly good listener, but an even better listener. So yeah, and everybody's got a story. And it's really cool to hear other people's story. It's very empowering. Yeah.
It really is. And that was kind of the perfect place to end this, because I think so many people will say that as they hear your story and find so much value in it and feel empowered from it. So yeah, I want to thank you so much for being a guest here, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you so much.
Bye for now. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
They say that the best things in life are free. And I truly hope that this free video helps you rediscover something else that is free, which is peaceful sleep. If you do find our content here helpful, then please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share it with people, because the more views we get, the more people we reach, the more chances of changing lives we have. The thing is,
leaving insomnia for good is actually so simple. You can and will rediscover a beautiful life at the end of this sleepless tunnel. So yes, please share it with people, hit the subscribe button, and you will be a big part of leading the change that we so want to see in the sleep universe. Thank you.